You know, my sister and I never really talked about like a lot of the philosophy behind all this. I mean, we both seem to be very much on the same page about being able to do this is an important skill set. If we're going to consume animals and you know their bodies in the form of meat or other substances, I think there is a value in being able to do this and at least having the experience once in your life. And we both very much agreed that though we didn't enjoy doing it, we were also very glad that we know how. I mean, we've been eating meat our whole lives. You know, growing up, it was just, it's what came from the grocery store. And honestly, that'll probably continue to be the case, at least for a while. I don't see us getting like totally off grid anytime soon. But there is something holistic and something complete about, you know, doing this part yourselves and kind of knowing how to do it and being able to do it. There is a value in using all the parts of the animal that you possibly can. I was there for, I think, all but one of the chickens' deaths, and, you know, each time it was a powerful moment, realizing that we were taking another creature's life. But again, anytime you eat meat, if you eat meat, that had to happen. You might not have been the one to do it, but somebody did. It had to happen. So once you have the chicken giblets, what do you do with them? Well, I'm going to start with the gizzards, and these are the gizzards. We'll get them up close so you can kind of get a decent look at that. And the gizzard is, basically it's the chicken's stomach, is really what it is. And I've looked up a few different recipes for things you can do with this. It looks like the most traditional way is to saute them up in some onions and garlic and maybe make a little gravy with it. And we're going to do kind of a version of that. I also found a really interesting recipe from Nigeria, and it looks like in this recipe the person was saying that the chicken gizzards are considered kind of a delicacy and culturally are reserved for the head of household. So women and children are told they're not allowed to have these things. So it's interesting how, you know, in some cultures this might be considered a delicacy, but in America it's often considered by most people to be kind of a disgusting piece that we don't eat. But it's something that many people used to eat all the time. I mean, when you lived on a farm and you were providing for yourself, waste not, want not. You know, this is what you'd work with. So we're going to figure this out. What all of these recipes have in common is that they say that you need to tenderize the meat somehow before you do anything else with it. If you just cook it straight up in the final format, it's going to be pretty tough and very chewy, and so that may make it not very appetizing even if the flavor is really good. So there's a few different ways you can do that. Some methods say to put it in salt water or buttermilk and let it soak for like 2 hours. I don't really want to take the time to do that. I've seen a few other recipes though that say you can put it in some salt water and boil it for like 20 to 30 minutes and then saute it or grill it or, you know, cook it up however else you're going to do it. But that helps kind of soften it up completely. And that makes sense because if this is basically the stomach muscle for the chicken, what's going on, and I'll show you how this works in a second, on the inside is all the undigested bits of grass and whatnot and a few little pebbles to help kind of grind it up. So this muscle is going to be grinding around trying to help the chicken digest its food before it goes into its intestinal tract. So it makes sense it would be a little bit tough. It's got to be a pretty strong muscle to pull that off. Here we have the chicken giblets. And this one is the last one that we did, and I went ahead and prepped it on site, partly because I thought I needed to and partly just kind of see how to do it. That's kind of what the inside will look like when it is fully cleaned out. But it sort of looks like this, you know, before. And the white stuff is just little bits of fat, which some recipes say get rid of the fat. Some people say leave it. It adds good flavor. I'm going to leave it because I think it adds really good flavor. Or I hope it will. I assume usually fat does add good flavor. So I'm going to leave it, let it kind of all cook together like that. Here it is, and I can feel it. It's kind of hard. It's very firm because it's got all that stuff inside. You can see this is the end where it would have started to be going towards the rest of the digestive system. And what we're going to do, it's actually, interestingly enough, a little bit egg-shaped. It's kind of ovular and, you know, thinner in one direction than in another. So along that thinner side, we're going to make a little bit of a cut. And it's okay if we pierce the inner sac because of how we're going to clean this off in the end. Although I'm going to try not to, but I may not be able to help it. I feel pretty deep there. Oh, I might have actually just found it. Yeah, oh, I might have just done it without Cutting the inner sac. Okay, so you see how I'm kind of peeling it back and there's this like inner membrane sac. If we were to open that up, and I'll bet you we'll have one where we do break into it. If we were to open that up, and you can sort of see where I did just start to cut it, it's basically like bits of grass and rock and whatnot, and you know, whatever stuff this chicken was trying to eat right before we killed it. Oh, I am tearing it because it's towards the other end. So we are going to lose some of that, but that's okay. We'll rinse it off. But that peels right out pretty easily. Okay, so then we keep going. It's interesting how it tears from itself. It definitely is tougher. I can feel the, like compared to what I would feel with like regular chicken meat, like just regular muscle, the parts we normally eat, it definitely feels firmer for sure. Oh, that one's not bad. That came out really well. I wonder if that has to do with the fact that they've already been chilled, because the first one I did right after the chicken was killed, and so it was still warm between both having been alive and having been scalded for plucking its feathers. But of course these have been sitting in the fridge for, you know, a little over a day now, so that could actually be making a difference. I don't know. I don't really know. And the one that I did yesterday, like, yes, I did cut into it, and it still came out very easily, so maybe temperature doesn't make a difference. I don't know. It's an interesting question to consider. Not that I think it matters too much in the end. Alright, and then we have the skillet of water, which I added a liberal amount of salt to, and it's not quite to a boil, but it's got the bubbles forming on the bottom. It's beginning to boil lightly. It'll be at a good boil in another minute or two, especially when I put the lid back on. We're going to drop most of these in here and let them start tenderizing a bit. I'll take care of this in a second, and then I'm going to wash my equipment and get ready for the next part. Okay, the chicken gizzards have been cooking for about half an hour. I think they are pretty well ready to roll at this point. I think they're looking pretty good. So we're going to bring them out and set them on this side plate, and then I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to put all that liquid in with the stock that I'm making, because why not? It's already got a nice little bit of the chicken flavor going on. I'm sure it won't hurt. And then we'll reset this. Let's get the water out, shall we? So all this will go in here. I'll be adding more water in just a minute. Get a little bit of olive oil going in here. We're going to let that start to heat up a bit. Okay, I hear it starting to sizzle a bit from the tiny drops of water that are still in there with the oil, so that tells me that it is nice and hot. So we are going to go ahead and add in our onion. Oh, and hear that sizzle. Yes. All right. 4 cloves of garlic, because I personally really love garlic. So I'm okay with going a little crazy with it. That'll break up enough. Make sure we get everything in there, because again, waste not, want not. Or waste not, want less at least. Plus, it's good flavor. Okay, and while that sautés up, I'm going to prep my grain. Go in the back there. Oh yeah. Oh yeah, look at that. It's got a nice brown going on here on some of them. We're starting to soften up a bit. I think we're in good position. Okay, so at this point, we can go ahead and add the gizzards back in. And I'm going to leave them whole, as is. I'm going to toss all 6 back in here. And kind of mix them around, because we're going to saute them up as well. And get a nice little sear, browning type thing going on the outside. Alright, and then while that cooks, I'm going to get some stuff together for making a gravy to go with it. So I've seen a few different ways to do the gravy, but there was an interesting one that I saw that used coconut milk, and I've also seen recipes that call for buttermilk or regular milk. I'm going to use half and half. Don't judge me. It's kind of creamy, kind of milky, but I'm not going to use too much. Just enough. Yeah, get a nice little thin layer going in there. I didn't add any flour or thickening agent, so I don't know if it'll thicken, but that's okay if it doesn't. And then I've got a couple of clumps of some amethyst basil. This is the first basil coming in from the garden this year. And the recipe I saw also had basil going in kind of large leaf like that. So we're going to do large leaf. And then I'm going to season it with a bit of turmeric, some ginger. If I had fresh ginger, I would have used fresh ginger, but I do not, alas. Some pepper. Let's turn this down because it's going to be ready way before the farro is. There we go. And that yellowing is definitely from the turmeric, for sure. Okay, so here you go. You can see the final dish. We've got the farro underneath and the full giblet and onion mixture up top. Maybe I should have cut the giblets in half because they're kind of big. I'll just pick one up with a fork and see if I can slice through it with my teeth. That's very tough. I may have some chewiness going on here. Let's try the sauce itself. Sauce is good. Oh man, I might be chewing on this. It's gristly. I'm getting there. Yeah, probably could have tenderized a little more. Parts of it are actually really tender. Well, not really tender, but more tender. Some parts are very, very tough. So I guess it probably could have cooked a little longer in the water, I would imagine. But the flavor's not bad. I mean, it tastes like dark meat part of chicken. Yeah, other than like the extra chewiness, when you get past that like gristliness of it, that's kind of a turnoff. And at first it's like, I don't know about this, but when you work past it, you know, it turns out fine. The rest of the flavor's good, and the texture, once you get past that point, turns out really good. It just takes a few good bites back here with your molars to like really crunch through that. Okay, alternative hypothesis, having now eaten the whole thing, all 6 gizzards, I started to notice that that gristliness was coming in roughly the same spot each time. It's kind of towards the middle of one side of it, and I think that might have been the back side of the gizzard. So I'm beginning to think what I should have done is been a little bit more careful about cutting off the white bits, especially on the edge where it might have been leading out into, you know, the next part of the digestive system. It was very gristly and sinuous the way that part may be. That could be an alternative hypothesis I'll test next time around. Be more careful to cut off that end piece, because the rest of it, firmer for sure than a lot of more traditional chicken meat, but the texture was very nice. There wasn't anything that made me kind of get a little grossed out. It was almost just like a slightly firmer meat. And very pleasant, very, very pleasant. So I think the rest actually did get cooked very well. I think I may have just included a part that probably shouldn't have been included to begin with. All right, today we're going to be working on the chicken hearts. I've looked up a few different recipes. There's some variations on it, but a lot of them are either to like saute it or to fry it. Sometimes you can bread and fry it. Most of them suggest cut off the top little bit here where some of the valves are. You can leave a lot of the fat on, which we're going to do. If you see any blood clots like we got in here, you can just rinse that under water. We're going to cut them in half just to make them a little bit more bite size and also easier to rinse out the middle of. I've got 8 hearts, about 4 total ounces, so about half an ounce per heart. A few things they recommend. One is don't overcook them, that if you overcook them it can actually make them a little bit too tough. And then all I'm going to do is I'm going to be putting them together with some salt, pepper, paprika, garlic powder, onion powder, and I'm going to be using some green onion powder that I made myself a week or 2 ago from the onion leaves coming in the garden. This was off of 2 pounds of onion leaves. I got this full jar here. So let's get these prepped up and mix together with the seasonings and a little bit of oil, and then we will get to cooking them. Okay, our hearts are prepped, and we're going to add to that some salt, some pepper. I like a lot of pepper, so I'm going to be kind of generous here. If you think that's a lot, you should see my friend Connor. He goes crazy with the pepper. We're going to add some paprika. I'm going to throw in some garlic powder. And some of this green onion powder. Oh, that smells so nice. Wow. And olive oil. Hopefully you can, yeah, there you go. Because I've got it in there. I'm going to grab a spoon and get this good and mixed up. I might have a little too much oil. Oops. That's okay. Okay, our pan is hot. Our chicken hearts are mixed up and marinated for a few minutes. And we're going to put them in. Woo! Look at that sizzle. Oh my. Yeah. We'll get a different utensil for stirring that. It only should be about 5 to 7 minutes. So I'm going to keep an eye on the time. Stir them every so often. Okay, that's been about 5 minutes and I think they're looking pretty done. So I'm going to turn off the heat. I'm going to put them onto a plate. Wish I'd made some rice or something to catch all those drippings. I won't let it go to waste, but it'd be nice to soak it into something. Okay, and so there we are. Cooked chicken hearts. I'm gonna let it cool just a moment, let it rest, and then I'll try it in a second here. Okay, and here we are trying the chicken hearts. I've got the chicken hearts right here. And I've got a really lovely salad to go with it. But we'll get to that in a minute. Let's try the hearts and see how they are. Mmm. Oh my goodness, wow. Oh, this is delightful. It's got a really good texture. It's not super chewy. It's firm, but chewable, if that makes any sense. Not like tough and chewy, just like, it's very meaty. I mean, it's a very, very meaty texture. I know that seems a little redundant since it is a heart and that is meat, but almost like a firmer chicken breast, but with a darker flavor, like what you get on, you know, a thigh, like enhanced. And the seasonings with it are great. Mmm. Mmm. Yeah. You know what this needs? This needs like a bed of rice or quinoa or something like that. Oh my goodness. Or throw this together with some broccoli and throw that over rice. Oh, this, or in a stir fry, this would be delicious. Okay, well, chicken hearts, definite success. All right, so there's a few different ways to prepare chicken livers that I've found, including sauteing, deep frying them, all sorts of different things. But what I'm going to do is make a pâté, because I've never had pâté before, but I hear it's really good. My sister seems to really like it. I think she's had it at least once, and she seemed to enjoy it. You know, I encountered it once in my early 20s when I was in college, and I was kind of grossed out by the idea, but, you know, taste palates change. We're going to give it a go, and, I mean, it's high in fat. Usually fatty things are tasty. So we're going to try it. So here we have, I think, the livers of all 8 chickens. You know, some of the livers kind of broke apart as we were eviscerating the chicken, so it's hard to tell. Okay, but I've got about 13.5 ounces of livers in here, so it's a fair amount of liver. And I found a recipe on Food and Wine for making liver pâté. So you put the livers in a saucepan along with basically like a quarter of a Valdilia onion thrown in here. I've got 3 small cloves of garlic that I'm going to crush into this. We're going to throw in some salt, thyme, and a bay leaf. And later we'll add some pepper to taste. And then we're going to put about half a cup of water in here. And then we're going to bring it to a simmer. So once it's simmering, we're going to bring it down to low and cook it for about 3 minutes, it says. And then remove from the heat and let stand covered. All right, the livers have finished cooking. And so we are going to transfer everything in here using a slotted spoon into the food processor. Well, everything minus the bay leaf, because the bay leaf adds a good flavor, but it's too fibrous to actually eat. We're going to bring everything over, we'll leave the liquid behind. Okay, and then the plan is to process until coarsely pureed, and then with it on, we're going to add a stick and a half of butter, which is a lot of butter. I don't know that this is exactly healthier than deep frying. So we're going to add the butter while it's pureeing, and then once we're done with that, we're going to add 2 teaspoons of, it calls for cognac or Scotch whiskey. I don't have either of those things, but I do have some chat whiskey, some of their rye. So we're going to try that. 2 teaspoons of it, and then a little more salt and pepper, because it's going to be noisy. I may need to scrape the sides just a bit, just to be sure I've got it really mixed in well. Oh, but it's looking nice and clean. Yep, I think we're good. Put this into some ramekins and cover with a bit of plastic wrap, and then chill in the fridge overnight. Okay, and here we are. Plastic wrap pressed directly onto the surface of the pâté for all of them, including the large container that filled more than I thought it would, but I wish I'd had a fourth like that. That probably would have been perfect. All right, they're going to go in the fridge and chill. The following day, it's lunchtime, and I couldn't wait until dinner. I decided I'm going to go ahead and try it now. So here is a rice cake, because I didn't have any crackers. I'm going to get more crackers later today. A rice cake covered in the pâté. It was definitely very firm to spread. I guess that shouldn't be surprising. There was a stick and a half of butter in the whole thing, so of course it's going to firm up in the fridge. But it's smooth, creamy, it is kind of thick, but it is spreadable. You do have to kind of be patient with it. So here we go, trying pâté. Very creamy. Not surprised from the butteriness, right? Not bad. I mean, it's definitely got a meaty flavor, so that liver comes through. It is certainly an acquired taste. I imagine it needs a little something, like possibly a little more salt or pepper. So I'm gonna go try that. Okay, I've added a little more salt and pepper. Let's see what that does. That helps. Yeah. I wouldn't say it's like my favorite thing in the world, and there's a lot of it in there, and I might need some help finishing all of it. But I mean, it's not bad. It's pretty good. I would eat it again. I would definitely eat it again. I also think because it's so rich and because the flavor is so very strong, I mean, there is a little bit of a gaminess in there. Between those two things, like limited doses, you know, yeah, one of those little ramekins it's not the kind of thing you're just going to like tear through the whole ramekin, or you might regret that if you do. Problem is, I think it doesn't last very long in the fridge, so I'll have to look up if it's something I can freeze and then save and like spread the love around. But yeah, it's not bad. I'm enjoying it. I think I'll enjoy this one. It should be fine. Probably would be better on some better crackers. Rice cakes aren't the best thing, and also I think my rice cakes have gone a little stale. So I'll get some better crackers later and try it again. But you know, on the whole, yeah, it's pretty good. All right, let's also deal with chicken necks. So I have here 7 chicken necks, totaling about 12.5 ounces, and I was looking up different things to do with them. There's apparently a lot of different options. So you can turn it into stock. Apparently you can fry them up kind of crispy, almost like chicken wings. They have a little less meat, but they will do like chicken wings. But I also found a recipe that is more of a Southeast Asian kind of style. I forget exactly what nationality, but it's going to be marinated in a yogurt and kind of a curry-like dish, although I don't think there's actually curry in it. And then cooked on the stove for a long while to help really soften it up and apparently make the whole thing edible. So let's get into that. All right, to our chicken necks, we are going to add a teaspoon of garam masala powder, or a teaspoon plus in my case. We are going to add a teaspoon of coriander, half a teaspoon of turmeric, salt, kind of to taste. I tend to undersalt things just because I can always add more later. It's supposed to be half a teaspoon of pepper. I'm just going to add some pepper because I like pepper. Pinch of some chili pepper flakes or red pepper flakes. 2 tablespoons of a garlic ginger paste, which I probably could have found if I had gone to the local Asian food store, but I have not had a chance to. But I made some myself. 2 like 1-inch pieces of ginger, peeled them, chopped them up really fine, and then a few cloves of garlic and chopped them up really fine. I found I did have to chop them pretty fine before I put them into the mortar and mash them up with a pestle, but I made I think a decent enough paste in here, and it looks like it's, I don't know, probably about 2 tablespoons or maybe a little more, but I like the flavor of both ginger and garlic, so it's okay if it's more. And then we are also going to add to that 2 tablespoons of yogurt, 3 tablespoons of oil. We basically mix all this together. The recipe that I found originally called for adding a few tablespoons of tamarind sauce. Now, I'm going to do without and hope it doesn't make too much of a difference. Tamarind would have added a nice little sweet kick to it. Okay, so that seems pretty well mixed. So what we're going to do is we're going to put this in the fridge and let it marinate for about an hour, and then we'll come back and cook it. All right, we had these cooking over a low-medium heat, low and slow, for a good 30 minutes. I think they're about as done as they're going to be. We're going to transfer them to a plate and give them a try. Okay, here we are with the chicken necks. They do look and smell delicious. We're going to take a little small one here. I cannot pierce it all the way through the fork, so I don't know if you can actually eat the whole thing. Well, there are meaty bits on there. This may be more of a finger food. Oh wow, that is a good flavor. It's a nice texture. I think it's going to be similar to what I saw in one video that had these fried up similar to chicken wings. There's a little less meat, but it's also a little less greasy than what you get in traditional wings. So yeah, you're kind of eating around the tough bits and finding the chewy bits. But pretty tasty. Probably also means I can't give the leftovers to the dog. Might be like chicken bone. But it's a finger food. There's a lot of like nimble teeth work to do. That's okay. I'm patient. I'll do it. Might be easier next time just to turn these into a broth. But pretty good. We'll probably try other things at some point. Yeah. Okay, and just for context, here's what the necks look like after I've picked them pretty clean. So, you know, yeah, low meat, and when I did kind of bite partway into one of them, a lot of small bones in the neck. I'd say it's about half as much meat as you'd get off of like a chicken wing drumette. So like 2 of those might make the same amount of meat of 1 chicken wing. But it was really tender, really tasty. The fact that there's so little and it's kind of hard to work with is probably one of the big reasons we don't see this served up with other parts of the chicken, but it's got some good meat on it. All right, I also decided to keep the chicken feet. So we have 16 chicken feet, 1 pound, 9.3 ounces total. And you can notice the ones I pulled out of the bag first mostly have the skin removed because we started realizing we should be removing that. We didn't for a lot of the early ones, but because these were scalded for the plucking and then chilled, hopefully it won't be too difficult to get the rest of the skin off. If it is, I'll have to reboil it. Apparently there are a few different ways you can do this. I'm not super interested in doing like pickled chicken's feet or anything like that. But they're supposed to make exceptionally good stock. So I am going to use these chicken feet to make stock. Since I'm going to can the stock, I need to cook it, and it takes a couple hours to cook properly, and then I need to cool it back down to skim the fat off before I can can it. And I was trying to look up whether or not I really needed to skim the fat off, because I've seen different recipes, and some say make the stock and then put it in the fridge and you'll have a lot of good fattiness in there, and that's really great for stock. But then all the recipes that talk about canning it are very explicit about make sure you get rid of the fat. Like what's going on here, and got to reading a bit and realized that yes, you do need to do that. If you are not going to can it, you do not have to separate the fat out from your stock. But if you are going to can it, then yes, you really should remove the fat, because that fat can really mess up your canning process, because the fat will expand when you can it, because you have to can it under pressure. So with the heat and the pressure, the fat's going to expand, and it could cause the seal to break, either while canning or once on the shelf later. So you can save the fat, and so I think I will, and I'll probably put it in the freezer and then, you know, figure out what to do with it later. Maybe I'll probably cook in it at some point down the road. But if you're going to can your chicken broth, yes, remove all the fat before you do it. And so to do that, that means you got to cool it down first, because the fat needs to be able to solidify. We'll skim off all the fat tomorrow, and then we'll heat it back up and then pressure can it. And like, let's be honest, it's a little weird doing this. See? Now we've got it nice and cleaned off. And it does make it look a little bit more like some kind of like mutant hand. Oh, this must have been the very first one done, because it's all the way up to the top there. Okay, and then the last part of prepping it, and what I was reading says that this might be optional. Some people do it, some people don't, but I'm gonna do it just for simplicity, is to cut off all of these talons, to cut off basically at the knuckle each of the nails, and they're pretty sharp. I'm trying to take it at the joint. As I get it done, it's going into the stock pot. Okay, so here we are with all of the fully prepped chicken feet, declawed, deskinned. Underneath, I've already added a little bit of vegetable. I had a little bit of celery left over in the fridge, just kind of roughly chopped up. I had some scraps of some Vidalia onion that I cut up. My dad gave that to me this weekend. I'm also going to throw in, just for funsies, some nasturtium. We're going to see if the peppery littleness, you know, is kind of nice in there. I think it will be. I've got 2 sprigs of rosemary I just plucked. I've got 1 horseradish leaf. And I've got a few green onions, which I'm just going to kind of tear just to spread the love around. That'll add a little more flavor. And then to this, I'm also going to add a little bit of ginger, turmeric, some bay leaves, and it's hard to see it hiding back there, the garlic. And then I'm going to fill it up with water to where it's all submerged. Okay, so we are at a nice boil. So I've turned the temperature down to a simmer, and you can see all those vegetables floating in there. A little bit, we'll give it a little stir. It's covered, it's on low. We're just going to let that simmer for a couple of hours. It is the day after. It has chilled overnight in the fridge. Let's see what we got. Oh man. Yeah, so a lot of fat congealed up at the top. And in fact, oh, wow. See that jiggle? That's a lot of gelatinousness. Is that a word? It's very gelatinous up top. We're going to have to, I don't really know what to do with that. It's actually very thick all the way down. All right, well, I was going to can this, but because of how gelatinous it is, I mean, it's jiggling all the way through. I'm a little nervous about canning it. I don't know if the gelatin that's in there is going to behave too much like fat and could cause a seal to break. But apparently it's some really good chicken stock. Those feet do a lot, don't they? So I am instead going to freeze it. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to basically measure out like 2 cups. Like, look at that. Look at how like gelatinous and jiggly that is. Oh my goodness. All right, well, I'm going to get 2 cups at a time in here and put them in bags, in freezer bags, and then lay them flat so that they'll you know, pack well, hopefully. I guess I'll just freeze this chicken stock instead, and then I don't have to separate the fat out at least. I'm going to do it 2 cups per bag just to make it a little more kind of portionable. You know, different recipes call for different amounts, but usually 2 cups is a good kind of amount that many call for. All right, well here we are. I ended up with 2 bags of 3 cups and 1 bag of 2 cups. Just kind of made more sense because I had the larger bags, and I've laid them pretty flat in the freezer there. And so we're going to let them freeze solid. They'll be in stackable bricks, then it's easier to move them, and then I can just thaw them out when I'm ready to use them for something.